When a millionaire publicly embarrassed a waitress, her shocking revelation left us in tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started as a normal evening at the bustling cafe downtown, where laughter danced around the air like a symphony. The scent of freshly brewed coffee blended with the sweetness of pastries, creating a cozy warmth. But then, it all shattered that I was on my shift, the weight of the world resting on my shoulders. I had just moved into a tiny apartment, barely scraping by with tips and my meager paycheck. My dreams of becoming an artist felt miles away, lost in the chaos of bills and survival. I was close to my mother, who had always encouraged my passion, but lately, her health had begun to decline. The doctor's words echoed in my head, heavy and crushing. I had to make it work for her sake. Then he walked in. The millionaire. Dressed in an expensive suit, his arrogance was as palpable as the thick perfume clinging to him. He ordered as if he owned the place, his voice slicing through the chatter. A hush spread among the patrons, eyes darting to him. I trembled as I approached his table, trying to steady my shaking hands. But something was off. He grinned that smug grin, his gaze piercing through me. "Can you even afford to serve me, dear?" He jeered, laughter following. Gasps rippled around the cafe. My cheeks burned, tears threatened to spill, but I swallowed hard. I had to hold it together, my dignity was all I had left. But the humiliation didn't stop. He made it a show, mocking me in front of everyone. I felt the heat of their stares, the weight of judgment suffocating me. "I bet you think you belong in the art world, but look at you now." Each word cut deeper than the last. My heart raced as I glanced at the crowd, some watching in shock, others sneering with glee, and just as I was about to run from the accusation, something changed. A voice, soft yet powerful, broke through the crowd. "Stop!" It was my best friend, Clara, stepping forward. The tension hung heavy, a moment suspended in time. A flicker of hope ignited in me, and I clung to it. What happened next sent shockwaves through the cafe. Clara's face was twisted with anger, her eyes ablaze. "You don't know her story," she shouted, pointing at me. "You don't know the battles she's fought." The room fell silent, breaths held as if waiting for an explosion, but the millionaire only sneered, twisting the knife further. "Whatever her story is, it won't change the fact that she's just a waitress." His words were like ice, freezing the moment, stealing the warmth. My heart sank. I stood there, trembling, overwhelmed by my emotions. Could I stand up for myself? Would I find the strength I had lost? And what if the shocking revelation Clara was about to share changed everything? My heart raced, questions swirling in my mind, my future hanging in the balance. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence hung like a heavy fog, each second stretched uncomfortably long. I could feel Clara's steady gaze on me, urging me to take a step forward, to say something, anything. My heart thudded in my chest, a wild drumbeat against the backdrop of whispers swirling around the cafe. "Clara, don't," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. But her fire had ignited a spark in me. The weight of humiliation was suffocating, yet beneath it, something else began to bubble up, a flicker of defiance. "That he doesn't know what he's talking about," I said, surprising even myself. My voice, though small, trembled with newfound strength. "I'm more than just a waitress. I'm an artist." Laughter surged through the crowd, mixed with incredulity. It only fueled the millionaire's contempt. "An artist? Look at you!" he exclaimed, his voice dripping with mockery. "You can barely pay your rent, but this time, it didn't crush me. Somehow, I found the courage to own my truth. Yes, I'm struggling, I admitted, my voice steadier. I'm struggling to support myself and my sick mother. But that doesn't make me less worthy of respect, or of dreams. The crowd shifted slightly, as if feeling the weight of my words. Some faces softened, murmurs of surprise spreading like a ripple in water. But the millionaire just leaned back in his chair with a disdainful sneer. Dreams don't pay the bills, darling. His cruel laughter rang in my ears, but Clara's steady presence beside me offered solace. She raised her chin defiantly in my support and stepped further into the fray. You don't know anything about her life. You think money gives you power? You're nothing without compassion. Tiny moments of kindness blossomed like wildflowers in the chaos. A fellow waitress handed me a glass of water, a patron nodded in approval. It was strange how much warmth could exist even in the coldest of moments. Still, my heart sank. I felt the urgency of our situation. I needed to keep my job and the little income one had while still navigating this storm of embarrassment. What's wrong, little artist? Afraid to show your skills? The millionaire leaned forward, taunting me with a wicked grin. His challenge hung heavy in the air, and my heart raced. Unbeknownst to him, I had been working on a piece close to my heart, one that I believed could speak volumes. Did I dare respond, fighting an internal battle? My thoughts wandered to my mother, her once bright and vibrant smile, now dimmed by illness. I thought about how hard I worked just for a moment's peace, a chance to live out the dreams she held for me. That flicker of hope inside me waged a silent war against the weight of despair. But just then, Clara beckoned my attention with a hand on my shoulder. Remember the piece you've been working on? She urged in a whisper, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. If you show it, it might change everything. Clara, I can't, I hesitated, scared to unveil my vulnerability in such an unforgiving setting. But deep down, a quiet rebellion stirred. Perhaps this was the moment to be bravado. Let my passion speak louder than the noise of judgment. Show them, she insisted, squeezing my shoulder. The warmth of her support was like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky, illuminating my doubt. The cafe had become a spotlight, a stage where my fears and dreams collided. With a deep breath, I nodded, slowly stepping away from the confrontation and towards the cafe's back wall where I had hung my latest work. Underneath the weight of 1,000 expectations, I felt lighter with every step. I sensed the gaze of the cafe shifting with me. Uncertainty draped around me, but the urge to reclaim my voice propelled me onward. As I approached the framed portrait, heart racing, I cast one last glance at the millionaire. He looked profoundly unimpressed but clearly intrigued, his arrogance wavering. The laughter around me faded away, leaving a hum in its place. I reached for the wooden frame, unhooking it slowly, feeling the pulse of adrenaline shoot through my veins, but just as I turned to expose my creation, a nearby door swung open with an unexpected crash. My heart stopped. It was my mother, looking friendlier than I'd ever seen her, being supported by a stranger. I wasn't prepared for her to be here, to witness the storm swirling in my life. Mom. I gasped, the world around me dimming as I rushed toward her, panic clawing at my insides. This wasn't the moment I had envisioned, standing tall and proud in front of the audience. As I reached her, I noticed the stranger looked oddly familiar, a persistent edge of recognition pooling in my mind. My heart raced for a different reason now. I couldn't let this be my breaking point. But could I handle one more shocking revelation today? The cafe's vibrant chatter fell silent, as if the world had momentarily suspended its breath. My heart raced wildly, caught in an unexpected tempest of emotions. My mother's presence was a beacon, yet it was unclear whether it brought stability or chaos. I could already sense the ongoing judgment wrapped around the millionaire's smirk, could almost feel him rehearsing another condescending remark in the corner of my eye. Mom, what are you doing here? I whispered, kneeling down to meet her gaze. Her once bright eyes appeared frail, clouded with exhaustion yet brimming with concern. I could see her frustration. The impulse to support me weighed heavily, but she was struggling herself. Sweetheart, I heard. I was worried, she replied softly, her voice fluttering like fragile leaves in the wind. "I just wanted to see you." Behind her, the stranger who had brought her here stepped closer, revealing a face that felt stretched and distorted by time, yet achingly familiar. "I couldn't take her home like that. She insisted on coming to find you," he then added, his tone respectful, but laced with worry. "Alex?" I finally gasped, memories flooding my mind. He used to be my childhood friend, someone I shared laughs with, dreams of art, and grand adventures around the city. Now, his presence felt like both an echo of comfort and a reminder of the past I had tried to escape from. As a myriad of emotions swirled within me, I could sense Clara inching closer to offer her support. The cafe began to buzz again, the patrons exchanging whispers, intrigued by the scene unfolding. Their curiosity mingled with my rising anxiety, each syllable echoing my worst fears like a relentless tide. "Mom, you should have stayed at home," I chided gently, my heart aching at the sight of her fatigue and how the lines across her face had deepened. "You need rest." She reached out and took my hand, her grip fragile yet persistent. "I'll rest soon, after I know you're okay. You're my priority, not this." She gestured around the room, the words brittle as they hung between us. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a raw undertow shifting from one corner of the cafe to the next, while I felt a burning sense of duty swell in my chest. My social worries seemed dwarfed in the face of my mother's frailty, but my heart tugged fiercely toward my moment, my chance to breathe life into my dream. "That I want to show you something," I finally decided, my voice trembling with both fear and resolve. It felt right, to articulate my world, my art, to both my mother and the dense crowd that had morphed from a sea of critics to spectators sharing this moment with me. As if sharing the momentum of my decision, Clara nodded, a silent but powerful cheerleader. With my heart pounding louder than ever, I turned again towards the wall. My hand tightened around the frame of my artwork as I stepped back, trembling with a heady mix of vulnerability and expectation, the weight of everyone's eyes wrapped around me like a well-worn blanket. "I'm an artist," I affirmed, voice steadying like a ship finding its course amidst choppy waters. "This is my latest piece." As I unveiled the painting, it felt like lifting a curtain to reveal something sacred, a piece of my heart, raw and unfiltered. Gasps filled the room, the initial whispers of judgment transforming into hushed awe as my work was revealed, a portrait of my mother, radiant yet haunting, eyes shimmering with both pain and love. I had captured her the way she looked before, her spirit woven through the strokes of my brush, an embodiment of resilience, strength, and unconditional love. But just as I let the weight of the room absorb the emotions inscribed on the canvas, the millionaire stood up abruptly, his brows knit in discontent. "This is what you want to celebrate?" He spat, his disdain echoing louder than my heartbeat, and in contrast, a wave of unexpected applause erupted from somewhere in the crowd. A middle-aged woman standing up, tears gleaming in her eyes, clapping fervently. "It's beautiful," she called out, her voice firm, dismantling the millionaire's condescending edge. "Art is truth." Another patron shouted, igniting bursts of support cascading across the room. Each clapping hand seemed to ignite flickers of hope. But even as I battled my swirling fears, I was painfully aware of the shadows looming large, the judgment of the millionaire weighing down on my resolve. And then, amidst the momentum of applause and newfound affirmation, I felt my mother's hand slip from mine, a softness drifting painfully away as her body leaned. "Mom!" I gasped, the world spinning uncontrollably. What? Clara's voice faltered beside me, but I could barely register her concern. My focus was fixated solely on the figure I adored, who had given me every ounce of strength I possessed. Tension crammed itself into the room, and I felt a chill as the applause faded, leaving the air heavy with shock. Whispers turned to gasps. My mother buckled, a look of confusion and pain etched onto her face as she tried to speak. But the words couldn't reach me through the haze of dread, a predator stalking the edges of my heart. As the room plunged into chaos, people rushing to help, voices rising in alarm, world trembled on the brink of another overwhelming revelation. Was this how our story was meant to unfold? In these fragmented moments heavy with silence and uncertainty, my flickering hope threatened to drown under the tidal wave of fear. Shadows loomed larger, imprinting their weight onto my soul. Panic surged through my body, lacing its way into every nerve ending as I knelt beside my mother. The cacophony of gasps and urgent voices fractured my senses. Clara dropped to my side, her hands trembling as they reached for my mother's wrist, searching for a pulse that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. "Someone call an ambulance!" Clara shouted, her voice breaking through the din while I clutched my mother's hand, feeling the warmth ebb away, pooling into a chilling reality. "Mom! Stay with me!" I pleaded, my voice trembling as my eyes searched her clouded ones. "Look at me please." But my mother's gaze fluttered, drifting away like a leaf caught in a whirlwind. Panic clawed up my throat, making it hard to breathe. The millionaire, still looming in the background like a specter of judgment, seemed to dissolve into an abyss of insignificance in the face of this crisis. Yet his contempt had stained the moment, a harsh reminder that kindness often felt eclipsed by cruelty. As if reading my mind, Clara lifted her eyes to me, her expression determined. "Breathe, okay? Focus on her. I'm right here," she whispered, though her own fear shimmered beneath her words. There was a sanctum in her gaze that helped anchor me even as the world whirled around us, absorbing the chaos in muted frames. A moment in time, pregnant with uncertainty. My mother's breathing became labored, each shallow gasp a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. I cradled her hand, brushing my thumb against her knuckles, whispering words of love, of hope, of the shared laughter that I ached to relive. It felt insatiable, an antique chain tying me to memories I didn't want to let go of. A warmth in the midst of this icy dread, and then, amid the flood of frantic people, a soft presence emerged. An elderly woman, perhaps in her 70s, approached slowly, her cane tapping softly against the cafe floor. She knelt beside me, her silver hair framing her kind expression. "May I?" she asked gently, gesturing toward my mother, her voice soothing like a gentle stream. I nodded, desperation clouding both judgment and intuition, allowing her to maneuver in with delicate precision. There was something about her serene demeanor that quieted the storm in my mind, albeit momentarily. With practiced grace, the woman placed her hands over my mother's. A faint silver glow seemed to radiate from her touch, as if she were a medium between realm soft tenderness and pain, physical and metaphysical. "Help is on the way. You did well to call," she told me softly, looking into my eyes, and for a fleeting second, I believed her. As I watched the elderly woman work, I felt a thread of connection weave through the crowd, a shared silence enveloping us, bonding strangers together with our heartbreak. The coffee shop transformed, shifting from an ordinary gathering to a sacred place of vulnerability where hope flickered amidst the cracks, but just as swiftly as it emerged, a new wave of dread crashed over me. My mother's eyes fluttered closed, the breaths growing ever softer, encircled by silence so thick it felt suffocating. "No, no, no!" I gasped, desperate to ignite her fighting spirit. "Mom! You can't leave us. Look at me," and then I saw a flicker of awareness in her gaze when she finally opened her eyes, a bewildered look that searched for my presence, for my voice. The thousand unspoken words flickered between us, the weight of apologies and dreams unfinished hanging heavily in the air. "Sweetheart," she finally whispered, each word taut and fragile. "You are so strong. So brave." Tears streaming down my cheeks, I clutched her hand tighter. "Mom, please. Don't say that. You're the brave one here. You're my rock." And then, like a tidal wave crashing against calm shores, the ambulance sirens pierced through the enveloping murmur, drawing me back to reality. Relief mixed with hostility as I felt the $1,000,000 sneer lurking, still attempting to find the light in the darkness just to snuff it out. Chaos erupted as the paramedics entered, all too familiar with the scene that had played out before them, a tale of life and fragility, tethered to the hopes of those too afraid to let go. They hurriedly assessed my mother, voices brisk and efficient, but I couldn't take my eyes off her face. "Mona, my art," she murmured softly, and the world felt like it tilted on its axis. In that fleeting moment, I knew she was asking about my painting, the portrait that had been unveiled just before her fall. I hesitated, feeling a fissure open inside me. My pursuits felt mockingly small compared to her very life. "Your art is beautiful," I breathed. "It matters, you matter, more than anything," but she only smiled weakly. Promise me never stop creating, my dear. Paint your soul. Those words lay the intertwined strands of everything we'd endured, of the love binding our disparate realms. With every syllable, I felt the weight of what she was saying. A hidden truth began to unravel, threatening to expose a revelation sweeping beneath the surface. As the paramedics carefully lifted her onto the stretcher, I caught the millionaire's eye across the room, challenging him to find words, to release judgment. Instead, he was swallowed by the crowd, the mounting commotion morphing into blurred shadows. What had my mother known that I didn't? The question lingered heavy in my heart, a stone tied around my soul, just as they wheeled her away. Did she carry a secret, a hidden struggle beneath her strength, obscured by love? That sense of impending loss pierced through me, but swiftly became entangled with the lingering fragility of hope. As Clara balanced on the precipice beside me, her grip unwavering, I glanced back at the painting, radiating vulnerability. My heart quaked as uncertainty swelled. I had captured a life beneath layers of paint, and in that moment, I realized, truth could both free and bind. The cliffhanger danced between the intricacies of love and fear. I was left grappling in the echoes of chaos while the uncharted depths of my mother's heart threatened to unravel. Would I discover the truth she had shielded me from? Or would my fear remain, suffocating my own journey like a jealous specter, lurking in the shadows of uncertainty? The sterile walls of the hospital were anything but welcoming. As I sat in the waiting room, my heart thudded, fighting against the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights humming above me, mixing with the muffled sounds of wheels rolling delicately over linoleum floors. Clara sat beside me, her fingers intertwined with mine. There were no words left to say. The air was thick with uncertainty, as though the entire universe had drawn a breath and held it tight, waiting like we were. Minutes passed like hours, dragging slowly, stretching the silence to breaking. I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had changed within me during the hours that had transfixed my life in an agonizing stillness. I grasped the remnants of my mother's last words, her insistence that I paint my soul. But as the hours swallowed us whole, those words began to twist into a knot of anxiety, tightening viciously around my chest. The hospital room had swallowed her spirit, leaving me with fragments of unease. Clara's grip tightened as the door swung open, and a doctor stepped in, the stark white of his coat emphasizing the gravity of his expression. I looked to Clara, who squeezed my hand so tightly that it almost hurt, and I swallowed hard, half expecting the worst. "Your mother is stable, but she needs to regain strength before we can discuss her treatment options," the doctor said, his voice steady yet tinged with a solemn weight. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped in a rush. My heart fluttered between relief and a new ocean of worry. "Can we see her?" I asked, my voice wavering under the tightrope of hope and fear. Clara's presence beside me helped anchor me, yet I felt myself teetering on the edge of despair. "Yes, but only for a few minutes. It's critical she remains calm," he advised, studying us with compassionate eyes that nevertheless bore the distance of a professional. As we stepped into the room, the sight of my mother lying frail and fragile on the hospital bed tore at my insides. Her hair, once vibrant and full of life, lay flat against her pale skin, and her breaths were measured and shallow, like a candle flickering at the mercy of a soft breeze. I approached carefully, feeling as though the slightest movement might shatter the precious breath of life, and I dared not break the fragile moment. "Mom," I whispered, stepping closer as hope began to flicker anew. It felt like an impossible task, yet I needed to bridge the chasm of silence that had suddenly widened between us. "Mona," the sound of her voice brought moisture to my eyes. It was soft, like a feather brushing against my soul, but carried weight, that same solemnity that had draped itself over our lives like a shroud. "I'm so sorry, don't be. Just promise you'll fight," I urged, desperate. "Please, don't leave us. We need you." "Sweetheart," she murmured, searching for my hand to hold, "I promise I will try. But you need to promise me something in return." "Anything," I said, clenching her fingers, her warmth anchoring me against the swirling fear. "Promise you won't let my illness take away your light. Live fiercely. Find joy. And remember the art, the beauty even in the midst of chaos." Her gaze pierced through me, and I felt a thunderous emotion crash inside, as if every treasured memory of her nurtured spirit resonated within. It was as if she was pulling me not only closer but also deeper into the very essence of who I was meant to be. "Mom, I don't understand." "What do you mean?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "Just tell me what you need from me." With each heartbeat, the moment grew heavier, and she hesitated, a flicker of conflict crossing her face, shadows dancing where light had once lived. "Things are more complicated than they seem, Mona." And I just then, a sudden knock interrupted our moment, and the doctor re-entered, his presence imposing yet somehow grounding against the tide of uncertainty. "I'm sorry, we need to keep this brief," he reminded, gesturing to the clock on the wall as if that could excuse how quickly time was slipping. My mother looked at me, her eyes shimmering with emotion, and with a gentle squeeze, she pulled me closer. "We will talk more. Just remember." Before the doctor ushered me away, my mother's gaze urged me to stay, etching something profound into my heart, but I was swept out into the hallway, pulled into a fluorescent-lit reality that felt detached from the world I wanted to cling to. The weight of her unfinished sentence hung precariously in the air as I stumbled to the waiting room, my thoughts racing with questions that demanded answers. I could feel Clara beside me, her comforting energy grounding me as we shared a look thick with unspoken words, the emotional landscape shifting around us. Then, as if the universe was conspiring against any sense of calm, my phone vibrated aggressively in my pocket, pulling me away from the comfort of Clara's presence. It was a message from an unknown number. As I glanced down, my breath caught in my throat, the pulse of trepidation echoing loudly in my ears. "Mona, I know your mother told you not to worry, but there's something you must know. Secrets will surface. You need to be prepared." A chill coursed through my veins, the gravity of the message crashing down like a wave of icy water, washing away any embers of hope left in the moment. I caught Clara's eye, and the tension in the air thickened. We were living in a narrative spun from threads of pain and unknowing, and as I moved to respond, my heart took hold of my feeble words. Was the battle truly over for my mother? And what hidden truths were waiting just beyond the horizon, ready to shatter the fragile world I thought I knew? As Clara pulled me into a gentle embrace, her warmth felt like a refuge, but I knew dark clouds loomed ahead, threatening to unleash a storm of revelations that could alter everything. The waiting room felt like a tightrope stretched thin, vibrating with uncertainty and resonating with the unspoken fears curling at the edges of my mind. Clara's arms wrapped around me as if to shield me from whatever tumult might follow our mother's dawn of reckoning. "Who could this be?" I whispered, staring at the screen, the unknown number blinking as though daring me to take the first step into a chasm of unknowing. Forcing a smile, I held the phone tighter as the words etched themselves deeper into my consciousness. With each letter, a shadow of doubt threatened to pull me under. My resolve to be the beacon of hope for my mother began to falter, eclipsed by a raw, gnawing fear of whatever lay beneath the surface. "Mona." Clara's voice, gentle and soothing, cut through the swell of emotion crashing down on me. "What does it say?" I hesitated, letting the moment stretch, each tick of the clock amplifying my unease. It's just someone warning me about secrets. They said there's something I need to know." I could almost feel the gravity of those words crashing down like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf me. Clara's brow furrowed, concern replacing the softness on her features. "Secrets about your mom?" "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing. "But if they're warning me about them," my voice dwindled, desperation peeking through. "What if they're about her illness? What if there's more to this than we know? Mona, we should show this to your mom." Clara's tone was steady, yet I sensed a flicker of apprehension mirroring my own. Testing the waters of that cruel unknown felt reckless. "She deserves to know if something else is," I blurted, cutting her off before the weight of my choice sank in. The thought of revealing my fears, the potential shadows they cast upon her fragile heart, sent a tremor through me. But Clara was right, my mother needed to know who was lurking in the dark. Before I could second-guess myself, I marched tightly grasping my phone, back toward the hospital room, inwardly battling the storm brewing in my heart. Clara followed closely, her resilience fortifying my own as we turned the corner towards where my mother's fragile existence awaited us. As soon as we entered her room, the air thickened with an unspoken heaviness, and I felt like I might drown in the silence that enveloped us. My mother was even more wan than before, the color ebbing from her skin despite the machines softly beeping like distant heartbeats. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered when she saw me, lacing her fingers together as if to summon strength from somewhere buried deep within. "Clara, it's so good to see you." "Hi, Mrs. Thompson," she replied softly, her voice wavering slightly. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," my mother said, a flicker of determination painting her features for a fleeting moment. But I knew better. The weight of our words shifted in the air like heavy smoke, suffocating any hope of normalcy. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words felt trapped, entangled in my throat. "Mom, there's something I need to talk to you about," I finally managed, looking at Clara for support. Her gaze met mine, and I steeled myself, feeling my pulse quicken as I plunged into the deep end of the unknown. I shared the brief message, the hints at secrets that lay hidden. "Someone reached out, and I thought you should know. They warned me about things I don't understand." And why mother's expression froze for a moment, her calmness cracking just enough for fear to creep across her features. Clara shifted beside me, the tension in the room palpable. I watched as the words settled over my mother like a cloud, dark and threatening, warning of rain to come. "Mona honey, listen to me," she said, her voice steadying, holding a deep river of strength beneath the current of fear. "Secrets are just that, hidden pieces of life we may not understand. But I am not afraid of what is in my past, just what it might mean for you. And it's not for you to carry." "But it may affect you," I protested, my heart pounding against the constraints of her determined gaze. "It could change everything." Then a soft knock echoed from the door, sparking my mom's attention. A nurse stepped in, her demeanor poised, yet I couldn't shake the shiver of foreboding that crept up my spine. "Ma'am, we need to conduct another round of tests," she stated while glancing between us. "Dr. Patel wants to ensure everything is going as expected." My mother, still refraining from breaking the fragile thread that held us together, nodded, but I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of panic that darted just beneath the surface. As the nurse moved to adjust the machines surrounding my mother, I turned back to my phone, a silent prayer escaping my lips that this wasn't an omen heralding disaster. But then the vibrations began again, another message. With trepidation, I opened it, only to feel the gut-wrenching panic rise within me as I read the new text. "Mona, don't tell her yet. The truth is more dangerous than you can imagine." My breath hitched, the words seeming to echo around the room like thunder rolling ominously in the distance, shaking the very foundation of my existence. I looked at my mother, her eyes filled with concern, the fragile light of hope dimming, and I was certain this storm was only beginning. The room felt as if it had shrunk, the walls inching closer, closing in on the crushing weight of the message I had just received. "Mona?" My mother's voice trembled, breaking through the fog of shock enveloping me. "What's wrong?" I fumbled, grappling with the duality of my world, caught between loyalty to my mother and the ominous warning bearing down on my shoulders. The threads of my resolve threatened to snap. "Mona," Clara whispered, her urgency grounding me momentarily. She reached out, squeezing my hand. "You don't have to say anything if it's too much," but the very act of holding back was tearing me apart. The truth was festering inside me like a wound that refused to heal, pushing against the confines of my heart and mind. I read another message," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother tilted her head ever so slightly, her eyes narrowing with concern. "What did it say?" A heavy silence hung in the air, as if the words were weighted with anguish. I swallowed hard. It said you shouldn't know everything yet. That the truth could be dangerous." The reaction was immediate. My mother's expression shifted, her brow knitting together with confusion and a deeper sense of dread. "Mona, please, what do you mean?" I hesitated, my heart racing as I weighed the risk of saying too much against the peril of burying my fear. "It's about your illness, I think." "What about it?" Her tone was steady, but I could hear the tremor twisting inside. It was the fear of the unknown, of secrets piling up like snow, ready to bury her alive. I took a deep breath, willing my trembling fingers to steady. "I don't know what to believe anymore. The words haunt me. Should I ask the doctor? Should I push for answers? What if there is more to this than we were led to think? A strained silence followed, stretching taut like a wire between us. The beeping machines filled the void, echoing the sorrow etched on my mother's face. Clara shifted, glancing at the nurse who had quietly exited, leaving us to navigate the storm ourselves. Mona, my mother said softly, her voice filled with a mixture of fatigue and fierce love, sometimes not knowing is also a way to protect ourselves. I have fought too hard to let fear cloud our remaining time together. At that moment, there was a knock again, but this time it was more insistent, as if it demanded entry with urgency. The door swung open, revealing an unfamiliar woman clad in a light blue coat, a sense of authority surrounding her. "I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing," she said, her voice strong but gentle. "I'm Doctor Who, the oncologist your mother was referred to. May I come in?" My mother nodded, a mixture of relief and apprehension. Doctor Who stepped into the room, her demeanor calm yet sharp with an underlying seriousness that demanded respect. "Mona, Clara," she acknowledged us before turning directly to my mother. "I just wanted to discuss the recent diagnosis and potential treatment options, given the new test results we received." That I barely registered her words, my mind spinning with trepidation. The feeling that great waves were crashing down upon me took hold, threatening to submerge everything precious in darkness. My mother looked between Doctor Who and me, shades of uncertainty hanging on her every breath. As Doctor Who spoke, laying the facts bare, relating the timeline and potential paths forward, my heart pounded erratically. She outlined choices and consequences, yet all I could think about was the message I had received. And as if time had conspired against me, my phone vibrated again, the screen igniting a familiar panic within me. I glanced down at the words, hands trembling, and as I read the message again, "Don't tell her yet," the world around me plunged into a frigid stillness. My mother's voice rang out, cutting through the fog, "Mona. What is it?" As I hesitated again, my gaze darted between Dr. Hu's steady tone and the intense worry painted across my mother's features. Clarity began to pierce through my doubts. Sudden hope flared within me, fanning the embers that had nearly extinguished. "I trust you," I whispered to my mother, summoning every ounce of courage I had. "I need to know the truth, whatever it may be." Before my mother could respond, another frantic knock echoed against the door. Clara instinctively grasped my arm tighter, her eyes wide as the door swung open yet again, revealing a familiar figure, drawn and urgent. "Sorry to interrupt," but the man stood there, breathless. "You need to see this. It's about your mother's medical records." Panic surged anew as I realized this wasn't a mere coincidence. The tension in the air was suffocating. Clara stepped forward, enveloping the moment in the little calm she could muster. In that instant, life felt balanced on a knife's edge, teetering between revelations and despair. As the man continued to speak, the hidden secrets began to unravel before our eyes, and I could feel the tidal wave of truth rushing ever closer. My heart raced, and for the first time, I was painfully aware this was only the beginning of uncovering what lay beneath the surface. Mona felt the weight of silence hovering in the room heavier than before. The urgency in the man's tone seemed to hang thick in the air, wrapping around her chest like a vice. Her heart raced, a rapid drum echoing, the adrenaline coursing through her. "What do you mean?" she managed to say, the words barely escaping her lips, quivering with an unspoken anxiety. The man stepped inside, a weary weight etched into his expression. "I'm Tyler," he said, his voice low but clear. "I'm with the hospital's administration. There's a critical issue regarding your mother's records, something necessary for her treatment." "What kind of issue?" Clara asked, her voice rising with concern, mirroring the worry that painted Mona's heart. Tyler hesitated, the struggle evident on his face as he gathered his thoughts, resisting the pull of uncertainty. "It seems there's been a MILLIONAIRE data breach. Some personal information may have been exposed. I can't divulge everything, but it's imperative that you know this now before any decisions are made." Mona's stomach lurched, instinctively clenching at the thought of her mother's sensitive history out in the open. The mentions of threats lingered ominously in the corners of her mind, swirling with the implications of the message. "Data breach?" she echoed, her voice thick with disbelief. "What does that mean for us?" just that you need to safeguard any discussion surrounding her treatment," Tyler continued. "And it might also mean that outside parties can now access information not meant for them." Mona glanced at her mother. There was a flicker of understanding and fear flickering in her eyes, but her expression remained steady. "Thank you for telling us, Tyler. You understand how serious this must be for us," she said, her voice a beacon of clarity amid the chaos. "Yes, and I'll ensure that you stay informed. There's more to uncover, but you'll be kept updated," he replied, his grave tone softening momentarily as he met her gaze. "I'm truly sorry for the distress this may cause." As he stepped back, allowing the door to close between them and the world outside, the space felt smaller than before, each piece of furniture a sentinel bearing witness to their unfolding turmoil. "Mom," Mona began, but her voice faltered as she grappled with the weight of the truth she still carried, the message that scorched her thoughts. Yet the gravity of the moment wouldn't allow her to turn away. What if this is more than just a mix-up? What if someone is manipulating the situation? "Mona, please," her mother said gently, her gaze steady. "Let's focus on what we know. The truth can break us if we let fear take the reins. We must keep our heads clear." "But I have to tell you, Mona," Clara interjected, stepping closer to divert her focus. "Let's take this one moment at a time. How about we reach out to the doctor for more information?" A hesitant agreement sifted through the air, yet Mona couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that time didn't stand still for them, every second slipping away like sand through her fingers. A battleground of secrecy lay like a churning sea just ahead, and the words "don't tell her yet" pulsed in rhythm with her quickening heartbeat. "Okay, he'll call Doctor Who." Mona finally relented, her voice steadying as she extracted her phone, fingers trembling on the screen. "But we're standing together in this," Clara nodded, squeezing Mona's arm, her warmth an anchor amidst the storm. But as Mona began to dial, all hope surged into a fray when the screen lit up once more, a new message blinking starkly against the dark: "You have to stop digging now. The next thing that happens will change everything." A cold wave of dread rolled over her, chilling her to the bone. The realization crashed upon her as the light from the phone illuminated the apprehension on her face. The hidden facets of her mother's condition, the potential danger simmering below the surface, it all began to feel overwhelming. "Mona." Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts, soft with concern. "What's wrong?" Words lodged in her throat, unable to breach the surface. The fear of the unknown spiraled within her, twisting and turning, ready to overwhelm her resolve. She glanced at Clara, who looked equally troubled, then back to her mother, the love radiating from her heart colliding with the fear she nurtured. "2 Don't know how to do this, Mom," Mona managed, tears welling as she fought against the tide of emotions. "Mona," her mother reached out, her fingers brushing against her cheek tenderly. "No matter what news we find, we face it together. That will always be our strength." The room felt thick with anticipation as Mona swallowed her fear, freaking out as she fumbled to answer the call that could either liberate them or pull them deeper into peril. Every second was heavy with possibility, hope, despair, betrayal, all blurred in an emotional maelstrom, but before she could answer, the door burst open again. This time it was a flurry of footsteps, and a pair of familiar faces entered, a doctor and the hospital's head administrator, expressions grim, searching for the truth amid their uncertainty. "Mona," Doctor Who said, urgency gripping her tone, "we need to talk. There are developments we aren't fully prepared for." "What we might uncover?" Mona's heart dropped, a single question echoing wildly in her mind. What newfound truth was about to come crashing down? As the tension snapped like a taut string ready to sing, they stood on the precipice of all that was hidden, on the brink of a revelation that had the power to change their lives forever. Mona's breath hitched as she took in the doctor's words, a storm of emotions swirling inside her. She could feel the weight of the moment settle uncomfortably among them, as if exhaling would somehow release the nightmares tangled in her heart. "Can we talk privately?" Clara whispered, anxiety creeping into her voice. She stepped forward, a protective instinct flaring in her eyes. The confidence she had shown earlier seemed to waver under the gravity of the situation. Doctor Who shook her head gently. "Time isn't something we have right now. "There's been an incident that affects your mother's treatment and your family's privacy," she explained, her gaze sweeping across Mona and Clara, pausing momentarily to lock onto each of their troubled eyes. "An incident?" Mona echoed, pushing back the swell of panic. "What kind of incident? The breach you were told about. It appears to be more than just a data leak," the administrator interjected, his voice strained. "We believe there's been intent to manipulate the circumstances surrounding your mother's care. Arrangements have been made without your knowledge that could hinder not only her treatment but the integrity of your family." "What do you mean?" Clara's voice trembled, and her grip tightened on Mona's arm, providing the only physical comfort in that fraught moment. Mona's mind raced, trying to process what they were saying. Only hours before, they had simply been fighting for transparency in her mother's health. But now, the stakes had escalated to a chilling level, and she was caught in the eye of a whirlwind she never wanted to be a part of. "Can't you see?" Doctor Who continued, her voice raising above the rising dread. "A person of influence is involved. They stand to gain from the mismanagement of your mother's care. We have begun investigations, but what?" Mona urged, feeling a surge of frustration beating against the simmering fear inside her. "You can't just drop a bombshell like that and leave us with him on your side, Mona," Doctor Who said, her tone shifting to one of earnestness, that undercurrent of support unmistakable. "But this is delicate. We have to tread carefully. I know this is unsettling, but I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" Mona felt a hollow laugh escape her lips, bitter and strained against the backdrop of her spiraling emotions. Around her, faces of support blurred as the tension in her throat rose again, choking her words into silence. Clara stepped forward, determined. "We'll work together, but we need to know who's behind this. If someone is taking advantage of my mother's situation, we have to find out who it is." "Mona, you have power more than you realize. But to wield it, you must be wise. There are forces operating in the dark, and some are better left unchecked," the administrator warned, caution lacing his words as he searched their eyes for understanding. A chill raced down Mona's spine. The whispers of hidden secrets and unseen enemies felt more real than ever, threatening to engulf them. She felt as though she stood on a precipice, with darkness lurking beneath, waiting to pull her under. "Will it hurt her?" Mona finally uttered, her voice trembling as she gestured toward her mother, who had grown pale in the midst of their frantic exchange. "If we push for the truth," Doctor Who hesitated, her eyes shifting toward Clara before returning to Mona. "There may be consequences," she confessed, as though understanding the burden of the knowledge she was imparting. "We need you to be prepared for whichever path we take." The weight of those words crashed over Mona, and in that moment, clarity sifted through the haze of desperation clouding her vision. If they were to pry into the murky depths of this threat, sacrifices would be made. Yet she couldn't back down. She couldn't stand by and watch her mother suffer in silence, treated like a pawn in someone else's game. But just as she steeled herself, prepared to embrace the fight ahead, her phone buzzed again, a desperate whisper from the digital void. "They are watching you. Do not act hastily." Mona's heart sank, realization dawning upon her, the sheer implication of the message crashing against her resolve. The comfort of ignorance was long gone, replaced by a chilling awareness of the shadows looming behind each decision they might make. "What is it, Mona?" Clara asked softly, noting the pallor on her daughter's face. "More threats," Mona replied, her hands trembling as she displayed the screen. "This has escalated far beyond what we imagined." Dr. Huss' eyes narrowed, an unmistakable flicker of concern sparking within them. "Then we have no time to lose. We need a plan, and we need it now." As Mona stood there, surrounded by concern, determination flickering like a candle in a windstorm, she felt the ground shift beneath her. A war was brewing, not just for her mother's health but for their very lives. And just when she thought the weight of grief and fear couldn't grow heavier, the door swung open again, a rush of air sending papers fluttering across the room. A stranger entered, eyes wild, breathless, the look of a messenger bearing news both gripping and terrifying. "Mona," he gasped, locking eyes with her. "I know who's behind this. And you're in grave danger." The world had cracked wide open. My mother's fairy tale had begun unraveling, revealing a dark and hopeless maze that I couldn't navigate alone. Every revelation, every glimmer of truth felt like another weight pressing down on my chest, each flutter of unanswered questions a call to arms. But the urgency in the stranger's voice transformed that weight into something else, something that crackled with electricity and ignited an instinct deep within me. Who? I managed, my heart beating rapidly against the confines of confusion and fear. Clara's grip tightened on my hand as the words hung heavy in the air, coaxing me to the edge of an abyss where shadows danced with threats. Who's behind this? The stranger took a deep breath, his features tense and his eyes darting around the room as if sensing unseen eyes watching us. You have to understand, this isn't just about your mother's health anymore. It's about more than you can imagine. Someone powerful is playing a dangerous game, someone powerful. I echoed, disbelief edging into my voice. Do you mean the millionaire? The one who embarrassed me? The billionaire who had mocked me like a puppet master, controlling the strings of judgment and disdain as if my art, my dignity, meant nothing. No, he said urgently, shaking his head with fervor. It goes beyond him. It's a network of influence, and they're all involved. I've seen it. They intend to exploit your mother's illness for their gain. They see her as leverage. Panic ignited once more within me. My mind spiraled. My mother's diagnosis, her vulnerability, could it all have been a pawn in someone else's chess game? I squeezed Clara's hand tighter, needing her strength as a tumult of emotions boiled over inside me. What do they want? I asked hoarsely, bracing myself against gravity pulling me backward. What could they possibly gain from her suffering? Control, he replied, his eyes boring into mine with gravity and sincerity. They want to obtain her assets, manipulate the narrative around her illness. They plan on keeping you in the dark, unaware of how deep the rabbit hole goes. The room hummed with the underlying weight of uncertainty. My mother was caught amidst forces larger than any of us realized, and while the chaos wound tighter around us, I only felt the gaping maw of fear swallow inches of air from my lungs. I can't let this happen. I want. I felt a wild surge of determination rise within me. Gone were the days when I would retreat into shadows, but there was still a storm brewing internally, one that begged to be unleashed with all its fury. You have to be careful, the stranger insisted. They're watching you, and every move could tip the scale. You can't reveal what you know until you're certain of their next move. My chest burned with the weight of it all. My mother's life weighed against the secrets and danger swirling around us like smoke. How can I fix this? How can we fight? There was a moment of hesitation, and in that glimmer of silence, I realized the truth that spread beneath our feet like roots, that I couldn't do this alone. There's a way, he said eventually, his voice dropping to a whisper. You need evidence to confront them, to put an end to this. A plan, I realized. A plan that involved digging deeper, that felt like walking into the jaws of a lion with only a stick and my mother's unyielding faith in me to guide me. But I need your help. I need to know what you know so we can protect her. Trust will be your ally, he replied, his voice simmering with a strange blend of urgency and caution. And there's someone who can help you navigate this. Someone within the network who've risked their own safety to speak the truth. How do I find them? My heart raced, every moment seemed a gamble, but the stakes felt higher now than ever. Meet me later tonight outside the cafe where this all began. I'll bring them, but you must promise to stay safe and quiet about our discussion until then. Do you understand? His glance pooled with sincerity, and I nodded, knowing full well that trust in this web of deception was a fragile thing. That I promise, I whispered, although fear lurked just beneath my breath. Good. Just remember, you don't have to shoulder this alone. With one final nod, he disappeared into the chaos of the hospital corridor, leaving an unsettled whirlwind in his wake. That I turned back to Clara and my mother, who still sat uncertainly in her bed, worry etching lines across her brow. I could feel the floodgates of emotion wanting to burst forth, but held it back, focusing on courage instead. But as I met my mother's gaze, the need to reassure her became overwhelmingly clear. Mom, they're working on finding the truth. You're not alone. I will fight for you. The words trembled on my lips, a promise I anchored deep in my spirit, whether I believed them entirely or not. Promise you will be careful. "I can't lose you," she said, her voice echoing a desperate urgency that hung heavy between us. I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes that coalesced with a strength I hadn't realized she possessed until now. "I will be. We're going to get through this," I replied, determination washing over my fear. In the depths of that hospital room, clinging to an anchor in my mother's love, a renewed purpose was forged from chaos. I was more than just a daughter fighting for her mother, I was an artist about to reclaim her narrative, pinning down those threads of truth as they danced around the edges of darkness and light. Later that evening, I stood outside the cafe, drenched in dusk, the eclectic hum of the city surrounding me. Clara's steady presence at my side fortified my resolve as the doors swung open, and a stranger emerged, accompanied by a figure cloaked in shadows. This was it. This moment, poised at the precipice of everything, could change the trajectory of our lives forever. Everything I held dear rested on this one encounter, and as I prepared to step into the fray, a surge of righteous fire ignited my spirit. Together we would reveal their truth or be swallowed whole. But I knew, deep down in my bones, that whatever happened, I would stand unafraid. And though terror lingered just beneath the surface, I remembered my mother's plea. We were not shadows. We were the light. In that instant, I gripped Clara's hand tightly and stepped forward. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, guided by love and fierce determination, a family bound by the unbreakable thread of hope. And in that moment, standing against the encroaching darkness, I thought I saw just a glimpse of what we could become, a testament of strength against every obstacle. Because sometimes, the most profound revelations arise from the deepest shadows. The final twist, the real truth, was yet to unfold. And I was ready.